Nick Saban just retired.
Is this real?
Yeah, it is.
Chris Lowe?
Chris Lowe. And Adam Schefter just quote tweeted it. I am shook right now.
Nick Saban retiring? Now, that's funny because
crazy.
Because, I mean, he was clearly outcoached by Harbaugh in the college football playoffs. He
was, yep.
But I also think this was his best coaching job, and it's official because I just saw it on the bottom line, breaking news.
There you go.
Alabama head coach Nick Saban is retiring.
Crap. Well, we got Mark Drumheller coming up next.
Do you need a minute, Paige? Are you going to cry on the air?
So Luke just texted me, and he's like, check your phone. He's like, messaging. And I was like, so I pulled up my phone, and I'm like, oh,
I almost did the computer thing that I'm not allowed to do. Who gets that job? Does Dabo leave? I mean, Clemson, you see the recruiting class that's coming in right now.
Goodness.
I've always thought that when Saban leaves, that Dabo takes over. Man, Nick Saban retiring. I think this was his best coaching job.
I agree with you, Ryan. And everybody I talked to around the, all my buddies who follow the program closely, they thought it'd be a couple years. And you didn't think Saban would go out on a loss, right? You thought, obviously, you knew he'd have good teams. That is stunning. That is stunning. What does this do to recruiting? What does this do to the national title odds? Because right now, Alabama is still, they're still the second highest odds to win the national championship. Georgia's favored at plus 350. Bama's right behind him at plus 550. There's this receiver that they're bringing in, Ryan. His name is, oddly enough, Ryan Williams. And he is supposed to be one of the greats from what I'm hearing. He's supposed to be nasty. Jalen Milroe's coming back at quarterback. All their offense is coming back. They have Caleb Downs coming back on defense, who's the second coming of Minkah Fitzpatrick on defense. They got dudes all over the field. Obviously when you go to Alabama, you're in the mix to go to Ohio State, to Georgia, to Michigan, all these other places. Do guys start leaving? Do they start? I don't know. My belief is that this news shocked us, but I don't think it shocked Alabama, right? I don't think Nick Saban would do that to him. I don't think he woke up this morning, looked at Miss Terry, and said, you know what? I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire today. I think this was talked about, maybe even heading into the college football playoff. Maybe these were conversations behind closed doors with the AD, Greg Byrne. And I just think that they have a plan in place. They know what they're going to do, and there's only one Nick Saban. You're not going to replace him. And I just hope that Alabama fans are patient with the next head coach. Just realize that you're not going to get another Nick Saban. And whether it is a Dan Lanning, whether it is a Kellen DeBoer, a Dabo Swinney, whoever else they bring in, they're great coaches. They're going to try and do the best job that they can. But also the SEC is a completely different ballgame, especially do we think about Sark as well?
I was just going to ask you that.
Sark's name isn't getting thrown around, and I understand, and he obviously just got Texas back to the playoff. We're throwing out the Lane Kiffins and all these guys that have Alabama ties. What about the guy that gave Sark a chance? Does he return the favor and go back to Alabama to keep them at national championship relevance? I don't think he does. I'm shocked that name's not get thrown around, though. Are you? Don't you think Sark would make a ton of sense?
I do, yeah. When you look at the guys, I always call it the Nick Saban rehab program. He takes a guy, it'll be Bill O'Brien, it'll be Sark, it'll be Lane.
Butch Jones.
Yeah, Butch Jones, a guy that's maybe got himself in a little bit of trouble, and then they turn their lives and careers around because they call plays for Bama, and it's the same system. I think Sark would make sense. I wouldn't want Sark. I mean, I like Sark as a play caller, but again, I go back, I watched that game against Washington. You're averaging 8-9 yards per carry, and yet you're dropping Quinn Ewers back 40-plus times in that game. I just think he overthinks things. But hell, man, he did beat Bama this year. But would Sark really want to leave Texas, especially if Quinn Ewers is back? You have Arch Manning, even if Ewers did leave.
Yep.
And they had a really good defense, a top 15 defense. Weren't great against the pass, but I don't know, man.
Let me throw a couple...
You're in the SEC now if you're Texas, though. It's probably easier to recruit at Bama, I would say.
Let's get to our guy, Mike Drumheller, betting analyst for FantasyLife.com, joins us on You Better You Bet. Mark, we were getting ready to talk about the NFL wildcard.
Screw the NFL.
And we will do that in a little bit, but we know that you love college football as much as we do. So your instant reaction to the Nick Saban news.
Yeah, it's sad, right? Because I love college football, and I think anybody that loves the sport loves watching Nick Saban coach year after year. I mean, he's been such a prominent force in college football, and I thought the job that he did this year was absolutely remarkable. The way he handled Milroe and kind of forced Milroe to grow and develop right before our eyes during the season. Didn't end the way that he wanted. But obviously, like, hey, listen, they had Michigan on the ropes more than anybody, that played him this year. So I thought he just did an outstanding job when you look at, the roster that he kind of dealt with. But I think that, he realizes that college football isn't what it used to be, and it's changing rapidly. And the portal's a big part of that. So, I just think that he probably felt like it was the right time.
Oh man,
I can't believe it.
It's crazy.
Like I'm shocked. Like I really am shocked.
Yeah, the Pete Carroll stuff, kind of shocking, but he's also getting older. All right, not that Saban isn't.
Yeah.
Mark, the game I got to talk to you about, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. It was sitting there at 2.5. Now we're at 3. The Eagles on the road, not trending really well right now. Total's 43.5. I think I'm going to have to bet the Eagles. I know what they look like right now, man, but I can't make the case for Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield in the playoffs here. What do you think about this spot on Monday night?
Yeah, it's a tough one. This is a real tough one because conventional wisdom tells you, you have a team like Tampa. I think they've covered their last 5 straight games, right? Wins the NFC South, which, every year seems like nobody wants to win. Somebody ends up on top. They're there. And then they're playing a Philadelphia Eagles team that just completely fell apart towards the end of the season. They failed to cover 6 straight games. So usually you see like 2 streaks like that, and you're automatically like, hey, I'm going to get a great number with Philadelphia. But I don't think you really get a great number here with an Eagles team that is just, I think is completely out of gas. And I think that's the problem. Now, me being from Philadelphia, hard to be objective in this spot, but, get a little bit emotional when you talk about your team, right? Especially when they've been performing the way the Eagles have. But I think, from a betting perspective, the way I'm going to target this is I'm going to play the Tampa Bay offense's team total. I played the Giants team total over last week, against the Eagles. And, you can get it at around 20.5. You might have to pay, the minus 120 or whatnot. It depends. The odds are a little bit different. But, targeting that team total, I think, is the way to bet this game because, the Eagles defense has just been a disaster, the past month and a half. And I don't see any way it's going to get better because you look at the problems that they have, and it's about them not being able to get the push up front, not being able to get the pass rush. Everything that was the foundation of their defense last year, they can't do anymore because they're completely out of gas. And I know that sounds like an excuse, and it's, hey, they're pro athletes, they shouldn't be out of gas. But this team's just out of gas. There's nothing left. The tank is on E, especially defensively. And I don't think you can change that without rest. And unfortunately, they didn't win enough games down the stretch to earn the rest. So now they find themselves going on the road in the first round of the playoffs. I think that, you look at Mike Evans and those guys, like I think Tampa Bay is going to have some success moving the ball. Wouldn't even be opposed. Like you can get a real nice price around the, the 130, 140 range if you play team total over 23.5. I might go that route as well because I think if the Eagles are going to win this game, they're going to have to do it by scoring a lot of points. The offense is going to have to be clicking, and I'm not sure that's going to happen against a Todd Bowles defense that likes to bring a lot of pressure. So don't want to back the Eagles in this spot. I'd rather fade the Eagles defense. When these two teams played during the season, the Eagles defensive line was why they won that football game. And unfortunately, they're not the same defensive line now. They're out of gas. They have no push left. So I'm interested as a fan to see it, but as a bettor, probably going to end up on, betting on Tampa's team total over, playing their offense in this one.
Monday night, 8:15 p.m. kickoff Eastern time, Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield. 3-point dogs against the Eagles, who look awful right now. They're all beat up. The total in the game is 43.5. I think we like the over in this one. Mm-hmm. I want to fade the Eagles, but I just don't know that this is the spot with Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do you think here, though?
I want to fade the Eagles so badly, too, and I think I'm going to. They've looked awful lately. Awful. And do we think just because this is the playoffs, does that mean everything is going to turn around? I don't know if it is for this team. And I say that having just a couple minutes ago said, well, this is the Chiefs in the playoffs. They're going to figure things out. I just can't say the same thing about the Eagles this year. I don't know why, but I have a different feel for them. I haven't bet this game, but a prop I'm looking at in this one is Chris Godwin over 55.5 receiving yards. I mean, the Eagles secondary has just been awful this season. Godwin's gone over this mark 4 of his last 5 games, and against a bad Eagles secondary. Eagles that gave up 85 yards to Wan'Dale Robinson week 18, 82 in week 17, 90 to Darius Slayton week 16. Like, they're just giving up way too much. Mike Evans props I would look at. Godwin's props is where I'm targeting this one. And I definitely lean towards Tampa getting the 3.
I want to ask you about Marquette because obviously one of the top teams in the country coming into the year, so much talent, Kolek and Cam Jones and all that they have in their backcourt. But it's like when I watch Marquette play, it just feels like they're missing something. And ever since Shaka was at VCU, he has struggled in the tournament. Like, are you still high on Marquette moving forward, or do you have some questions with them?
Yeah, I think that at the beginning of the year, I was really, really high on them. Thought that they were potentially, one of the top 2 teams in the Big East. I got a little flack because I picked Creighton over them to win the league. But I think it's pretty clear that they're a scorer short, right? Like, Tyler Kolek can do his thing, Cam Jones can do his thing, but they're really missing that third guy. And a lot of people thought that David Joplin could potentially step into that role. And it's tough when you have to ask him to guard the opposing team's best wing and then have enough energy to bring it on the offensive end. That's just not really his game. He hasn't really grown into that yet. Some of their young guys still haven't really asserted themselves as like, hey, I got to be the number 3. I think in theory, Oso Ighodaro is supposed to be that guy, but I don't know if he's best suited to be someone you just hand the ball to on the block and say, hey, can you get a 16 and 8 tonight? Like, that's just not necessarily the best version of him. So this is still a really good team. I think it's a team that's going to make plenty of noise in the Big East. I think that they're not going to beat themselves moving forward. I think they're starting to play a little bit better where they're going to figure themselves out. But if they don't have a third guy emerge, that third scorer, I just don't know if we can really trust them to put it together in a big run in March, because it feels like they're one guy short and they just don't have that last little missing firepower link. Like, this is a good team. Maybe they get a good draw and they can make a run, but I don't think it's quite as dominant as some of the teams that near the top of the country.